This is working. Welcome, everyone. We think the internet is down in this building. We have been told that. It's been up and down all day. So I would like to welcome folks who are listening from their homes or afar, but I don't think that's going to happen. So welcome to all of you. We are recording this so that people can view it later on and see our panel of experts. So this is the third in our series on free speech. And we started out with Professor Chemerinsky, who talked to us about the way the First Amendment protects speech, essentially protecting us from any intrusion on the part of the government in terms of what we can say and what we can express. And the second session, Ron Silver did a presentation for us on what happens when the First Amendment essentially collides with events that are pretty emotional, pretty difficult. So he talked, for example, about the time, which I think was in the 50s or 60s, I vaguely remember that, when the Nazis were going to parade in Skokie, Illinois, which was home to a lot of Holocaust survivors. Come on in. And he also talked about Charlottesville and the events that happened within the past couple of years. So tonight we have a panel of experts who are going to talk to us about social media, the impact of free speech on social media and the impact of social media on free speech. And helping us as moderator, we have Jill Slansky over here. She's a retired educator. She has taught grades 1 through 9. She's taught at PSU. She's taught at University of Portland. She's a former board member of the Oregon Jewish Museum and Center for Holocaust Education, and she's currently co-chair of their Speakers Bureau. She also is a docent for the Holocaust Memorial in Washington Park and leads tours there. And Jill is going to introduce our panel. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I'd like to thank Ben Sandler, who is our education director here at CBI, for getting these wonderful volunteers with probably a little arm twisting, or maybe not. They seem very happy to be here. And as I said to them a little bit earlier, as we were getting acquainted, we're here to learn from them, that they are the generation that grew up using social media. We are the generation that had to learn how to use a computer and social media. And so we're really, I hope you're in agreement, looking around, you're my age or a little bit younger, I think, but we're looking for answers too, I think, as parents or grandparents, in my case, an aunt, and looking for how the social media has really impacted this generation of wonderful teenagers that we have here. So I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. What I asked them to do was to let you know a little bit about themselves and also share how they define social media. And I made a joke, although most of them didn't get the email, that to keep it to about 100 words or less, but nobody would count the words. Okay? So, Anna, since I didn't talk to you, do you want to be first or last?
I'll be last.
Okay. Adeline, you're up, okay?
I guess that means I'm in the hot seat then. Hi, my name is Adeline. I'm in 8th grade, and I define social media mostly as an app or a platform where you can view stuff that people have made and put out into the world, but you can also put stuff out into the world, information about your life that you want to share with others. So you're both the person viewing the social media, but you're also making the social media. And this all wrapped up into one platform.
there anything else you want us to know about you? No.
Not really.
Okay. Okay, next.
My name is Max. I'm a junior at the Beaverton Academy of Science and Engineering in the Beaverton School District. I've been part of CBI for the last 7 years and been a Mudrick in the office for the last 2 years. For the record, none of what I just said I would say on social media.
Hi, my name's Annette Cohen. I am a sophomore at St. Mary's Academy. I would define social media as a way that I think people can connect in the way, hold on, I wrote it down and I said it in a really smart way. Let me check this. I said, I define social media as a way that people connect in a way that is both accessible and controllable.
My name's Avery Dorfman. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a junior at Ida B. Wells High School, and I would define social media as a platform that allows people to connect and be influencers and also be inspired by other people's content.
What was the last part? Other people's
Content.
content. I have a question because I don't understand. What is an influencer and how do you become one?
Avery's actually a
I
self-proclaimed
know,
influencer.
Anybody can answer, but I hear influencer all the time and I really don't know what that means.
Yeah, I can answer. So an
Thanks.
influencer can be someone with a large platform, so someone who has like a bunch of followers and like the followers are interested in what the creator is creating and is getting more popular by that type of content.
Yeah, and also they make brand deals with people and they do these things so that they can influence the people that are watching them and kind of tell them, you should be doing this or you should be buying this, or just kind of telling them, not like controlling them of what to do, but just, yeah, it's influencing them. Exactly, influencing.
So their goal is to usually sell things or just change opinions or?
I think their goal is to, well, it depends, but most people adapt to what they like, and what they like is what other people like, and
Okay.
then that's how their platform grows.
Okay. The other words you're using, for those of us over 40, is that safe? Okay. Are the words platform and app, and I lost the other word, but it'll come back. What's the difference between a platform and an app?
An app is like, Max, did you want to answer that? You can answer.
Sure.
Max is
The-
like, I
the-
don't know.
The app is more of the service side run by a large company, a more corporate side of things. A platform is more of the following a single individual has built for themselves, how many followers they have and how many people they can reach with one post.
So how did they do that to start with? Let's say I wanted to have a platform. What do I do?
You make an account.
Everybody more or less has their own platform, which usually is just posting stuff about their day-to-day life. Someone can make a platform of their pet or their job or something they want to educate people about. And the goal is, most people use it to just, as an everyday thing, to tell people about what's going on. Some people use it more as their job, their way of making money, and the more followers you have, the more people you have interacting with the things you put out into the world, the more popular you are, and the more business opportunities and money, if you have enough followers, you can get. So lots of people have platforms, but it's, if you want to start like having, if you want to make your platform really popular, there's certain things you can do, like following current trends, or like, yeah.
Okay. Wow. I think I understand. Anybody want to elaborate on anything or add to?
Sure, I can.
Sure. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, I did never introduce himself.
Go for it. I can't see you.
Oh, hi.
Sorry.
I'm Ayo. I'm a sophomore at Jefferson High School. And I define social media as like,
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped you completely. I'm so sorry.
you're okay.
Go for it.
As a digital space that you can consume and create media.
Okay. This is like a foreign language. It really is. The concepts are a lot different than I thought, maybe. I had a very superficial set of definitions in my head, and yours are
Well, what
very
did you think
helpful.
they were?
You know, more like, what did I think they were? Wait a second. A little reversing here. Well, I guess I hear the terms and I interact on, I guess, the apps that, as opposed to platforms. And I communicate with friends and I send emails, which is not part of all this at all, is it?
I think more or less it can be.
Can be. And I look for information. I look at YouTubes to learn how to change batteries in my technology at home and that kind of thing. Is that a platform or is that an app?
I think that would be more like an app.
Okay.
I think there's two different, like, types of social media, I would say. Like, the ones that you're talking about, like texting or emailing, one-to-one communication, and like things you can research, like going on YouTube. And then there's Instagram and TikTok and Twitter, where you're talking to a whole bunch of people, and you aren't looking for one specific person or fact or information. It's the world talking to you, and you talking to the world. It's more like one big group conversation or like one-on-one conversation,
Yeah.
kind of.
I think that like texting and emailing is more privatized than
Yeah.
Okay.
social media.
Because I like my goddaughter and some of her peer group. She's a freshman in college this year. I follow her on Instagram, but I don't ever post anything on Instagram. So I see what she and her friends are doing, which is actually horrifying, but that's beside the point. Some things I'd rather not know. How many parents feel the same way sometimes? So, okay, the next thing, maybe yeah. Okay, what platforms, you mentioned Instagram, you mentioned, what about Snapchat, isn't that one?
Yeah.
What are the ones you use most often?
Going down the line.
Shamefully.
Probably I use Instagram a lot because the messaging system on Instagram is a lot easier to use than a lot of other apps' messaging systems, and it's also like linked with Facebook, which means that you can link Messenger to it for like texting adults versus kids your age. And then also Be Real, which is
What was the last one?
Be Real.
Oh, should we explain
Be
Be Real?
Yeah, you want me to explain?
Do you want me to
I
explain?
think you should.
Okay, okay, I guess I'm explaining Be Real. Yeah, you get it. So Be Real, such a professional. Be Real is a thing, and it's like, it's kind of like a photo album, and every single day at a certain time, everyone who has the app, a timer goes off, and you have 2 minutes to post it on time or late, and you do it one time each day, and you can see the photo, and you can see all your friends' photos, and after that, it's gone. And you can see your own kind of gallery of all of your photos from each day that you've taken. Oh yeah, and it's a front and back camera. Thank you. That's helpful.
What do you mean by front and back?
So it takes one photo from the front, and then like a couple seconds later, it takes one from the back. Should I show an example? What was my Be
Show
Real
him
today?
from the
Actually,
DC
it
trip
was-
with the robot.
Yes! Oh my god, that was such a good Be Real. Yeah, so thank you,
So they
Ayo.
did, but they don't,
So inspiring.
they erase, but you still have your own? Is that how that works?
Yeah, so
Yes.
there's a page, I guess, that's up for 24 hours, and then after the next timer is set, everything resets, and then a new page is.
So here's an example from our album from when we were in DC. The front camera is by Michael Kahana, and unknowingly, and the back camera is all of us. So it does it like that.
Okay, well, thank
Excellent
you.
Be Real. Some of my finest work.
So when you're looking at these platforms and/or apps, how how does the quality of what you're seeing or the accuracy of what you're seeing influence whether you spend time there or not? Like if you're looking at one of these influencers, how do you know if what they're proposing is accurate? Matt?
That's the neat part.
That's the
You
neat-
don't.
Yeah.
You don't, and that's good?
No.
No, you
No.
I think you always need to be, like, just in the back of your mind, understanding and knowing that anyone can go online on these platforms and say anything they want to. So, like, they could be making up ridiculous facts. So you have to keep fact checking in your mind. Like, sometimes if I come across a fact that I don't think sounds right, I might, like, go and look it up or, like, fact check it myself. But you always have to be thinking, is this real? Is that photo edited? Is that fact made up?
And how time consuming is that for you? If you
Well,
want,
It depends on the
that's the
issue.
trick is that we don't really know how much energy is being used in consuming media because we're at, like, for instance, TikTok is like a really big platform of media that people consume. And the videos are so short, they're like, 15 to a minute long. Like, so you're consuming,
seconds.
yes,
They're fun.
yes, you're consuming like mass quantities of short media that you aren't fully processing any of them. You're just rapidly consuming it, switching between apps, like because we've been taught that this like multitasking or this like is like a more efficient way to consume media, but you're actually just putting more and just not giving the time to process it. And so sometimes it's actually more exhausting when you think you're like relaxing on your phone.
so if you are fact checking, where do you go to fact check?
Google.
Google. Okay.
Google's free. That's all you say. Google's free.
So on Google, I know I use Google a lot because there's
Yeah.
lots of things I don't know, and I have to find. But how do you know that what you're reading on Google is accurate?
You just gotta check the sources.
Huh?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you really check the sources on when you
Sometimes,
fact check an Instagram post?
I mean, sometimes they like the little thing at the end and it's like, this was from the Urban Dictionary or this was from like New York Times. Then you know it's like, okay.
I'm gonna be completely honest. My source is TikTok because there's a lot of views and they might all be incorrect and non-factual. But then I'm like, it's not one specific answer. You can have because a lot of media consumption, it's not a direct question unless it's like a building blew up and I'm like, it did not. That building is still standing.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say? We cut you off.
If you click on a specific link that like brings you to a little website, if you look at the end of the link, there's like 3 letters like .com or .gov, and like the .gov is like it was a government thing or like I'm forgetting it right now, but like some of like it tells you if it was like a website or like a university made it, so you can
ORG.
yeah, org. So you can see like which ones are usually more factual and which ones tend to be less factual. So it's like a quick like fact check if it's like does this website seem accurate? So you can just like look. It's not like completely positive, but it works more.
Is there any danger in that?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
It really depends on what you click on. Usually you want to look for more reputable sources like known fact-checking organizations like Snopes or established news organizations.
Okay. I was getting a little scared there for a minute.
I think too, it kind of depends on what you're looking at, right? So like if you're looking at a video and it's like a makeup influencer talking about, this is the product I like and you should all buy it because it's this, and you're like, well, I don't know, like you can look it up of like your own personal opinion, you can try it, you can just say, oh, maybe that was their opinion on it and they're getting money for selling the product and, that's just their opinion on it. But I think if it's things in like politics, like I think that's where it gets a little more dangerous is you don't necessarily know who's telling the truth, who's telling their experience, who's spreading misinformation, who knows what they're talking about. And I think that's when it comes down to like, you really have to be careful of what you're seeing, and you have to really check your sources to check the historical evidence of that.
Preparing for tonight, I read that the average teenager, but they didn't define who average was, because I was looking online, And I was looking on a platform about social media, but they said that the average teenager spends 7 hours and 22 minutes a day interacting with social media.
Yeah.
Accurate.
That
Let
sounds
me
about
check.
right.
Hold on. I don't want to categorize that. No, you can see on your phone too. You can
Well,
see
I
how
mean,
much.
there are people out of the average, but I have friends who vary from, oh, I only
Okay.
use my phone 8 hours a day to like, oh, my screen time this week I spent 30 hours on TikTok within a span of 6 days. Like,
How do you find time? You go to school,
Yeah.
and you're all going to pretty prestigious
that's
schools.
the thing
you do
about the
sports.
like the
Never
small
mind, you were
amounts
right.
and lots of
You were
media
right,
with
you were
like
very right.
videos that are 15 seconds or like scrolling through posts. You are looking at your phone at all times, like any passing period between classes. You're going to the
Yeah.
bus. You're waiting in line for a coffee shop. Those are all times that you can quickly consume lots of media within like 5 minutes.
Yeah. And I think it's dependent too, like, I feel like there's all this shame around like, oh, you're spending too much time on your phone, kid, but like, I
But
think
it's so normalized.
It's so normalized, and I think too that not only is it normalized, you're not always, like, you're looking at it, but are you always consuming it? Like, you know, like what Io just said of like, sometimes you just do it and you're waiting for the bus, or when you don't want to talk to anyone during lunch or something, and like, you're not always actively consuming the media. Sometimes you're just looking at it to have something to look at, and I think to say, like, I don't think it's fully accurate to say that all the time teenagers spend on social media is time that they're consuming the media.
It's like you would go on social media, or like if you're bored, if it's like 2 minutes while you're waiting for like your coffee to be made, you're just like looking at a cute cat video or two to like make yourself laugh. Like it's like a way to relax, to like wind down a little bit. And it's not like you're always going on social media to like to fact check everything, to like learn something new. People use it as a way to relax and a way to laugh and a way to just wind down, or yeah, agreed.
It's all in the quick dopamine rush and just giving your brain something to do.
Giving your brain something to do. Okay. As opposed to sitting on the beach and looking at the ocean to relax.
Well, there's not many beaches in Portland. I wouldn't say that that's widely varied.
And they're all very cold.
Yeah, it is very cold.
And windy.
I'm just kidding. I've heard that some schools have their own private social media sites. Do your schools have that?
Yep.
Yeah. And Nook,
No.
actually, you have very, very many.
Oh,
The
we love
inst-
to. We
the
do have
inst-
many.
the student-led Instagram accounts.
Yes, they're very funny. We have a lot of student-led Instagram accounts at my school, making fun of the school. Some of them are really funny, and some of them are not so funny. But there was many last year. Like I would say, like I
Well,
went
and
to my
also
school last year.
they create one for like every event you
Yes.
hold and stuff like that as a way to
Yes.
advertise it.
Yeah, there's a lot of advertising in my school's culture. So there's a lot of social media accounts. There's a lot, like they have it for kind of every different department, every different club. Like they have almost a social media account for every single one.
So how's it used though in the school? You said for advertising events.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time, like we have at my school, particularly just a lot of outside like outreach for the school, especially saying it's an all-girls private school. They need a lot of like outreach to like have people know what's going on. And I think that a lot of the events that they hold is, you know, campaigning and like saying, hey, you should come to our school. And a lot of that is through social media because it's something that's so accessible.
At my school, I'm a club leader. I lead a club called SAFER, Students Advocate for Ending Rape. And to get people to come and to get members to join, we make posts and we repost them I repost them on my Instagram story to get viewers so they know the meetings, when they are, what time they're happening, and to attract more members of the club.
Because you're an influencer, of course.
If you when you do your own postings, I think that's the right word now.
When you make a
Are-
post.
When you make a post, thank you. When you make a post, do you take any special care of the language you use when you make your post?
Yes.
Yeah.
In what ways?
Definitely.
What do you monitor and what do you self-monitor?
It depends what you're posting about.
And you want to
Nothing.
attract.
What?
You want to attract your viewers, so you want to have it look big and bold and welcoming and
Well, I think it really depends on the audience, because
Yeah.
think about like your spam account versus like
That's true.
it depends
your
what you're trying to
club-
attract.
your like advocating for a club account.
That's true.
I don't understand what you two were
Hold on, I think we need an intermission on this. I think they're about to say something.
What were you saying that was, it depends on what you were posting?
Oh, I was saying it depends on your audience.
Yeah.
Like from who your account is catered to. Like if
Yeah.
it's public, private, if it's something that's for friend group or family, or if you're trying to attract strangers for like influencing.
Like you said, you don't want to see
purposes.
all what your granddaughter's doing. You know, maybe that's not a family appropriate account. What were you going to say?
So your language varies based on your audience?
Yes, absolutely.
Yep, and you also have to take into account that nothing, even when it's just your friends, nothing really goes away. So if you have something that like you might tell a best friend, something that like you don't want like your entire school to know, you wouldn't necessarily put that out in a post, even if it is just like like a small group of friends, because nothing really goes away. So you have to be careful not to say something that's like offensive or like could get you in trouble, because like it can be found again and it will come back to bite you. And it's also just not good to say those things.
And adding on to that, like a lot of us are interested in going to college, and there's like they're saying that like they'll find you on your social media and they'll look and see if they want you as someone representing their school. So you have to be careful with what content you want out there to the public.
Because on social media, it's when like all parts of your life collide. Like you can have your school friends and people from camp and the adults you interact with in your life all coming and looking at your social media page. So you have to make sure that it's friendly for everyone, and like you can make smaller groups or direct posts for each one of those different groups, but if you're like posting a lot, and people can just go look at your page, so you have to make sure like it's welcoming and safe for like all the people in your life.
Yeah. Just following up on that, I know someone who did not get into graduate school because of what was on her social media page.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that happens.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm glad that you're aware of that, because she's very, very bright. She went to college when she was 16, and she graduated when she was 20, and she had this whole plan set aside of what she was going to do next, and she could not get into graduate school as a result of, I don't know what the postings were, but that's scary.
Yeah. Because there's also abilities to like make accounts private and public, and you can control who you want to have you followed, and you can also like remove people, add people if you have a private
Block
account.
people.
Yeah, and restrict people from commenting, from seeing like different stories. There's private stories, there's close friend stories, there's just like so many resources to privacy, but yet everything is still public.
I think too that it's a way to like, it's very personalized, right? So like, if you know this family member tends to comment like a little too many racist things under my Instagram post, so you're like, okay, maybe I can access, like, you can stop their access from commenting. You're like, I still want them to be able to have this access into my life, but maybe not have them have all access to my life. And I think that it's very personalized in the sense that you can really personalize based on the person who it is, right? And you know these behaviors or there's tendencies they have, and you can say, okay, I'm gonna limit them from this, but not this. And I think that because social media is typically very public, that it's good to have those like more personalized features.
Are any of the platforms that you use, are they monitored in any way, or is all of it done by self-monitoring?
Yeah,
Yeah. They're both monitored by yourself as the one in control of the account, and by moderation
You can also have parents
teams.
moderate. Yep.
That too.
What? What did you say?
You can have parents look over it, so you can have a parent-led account that they can see everything you're doing, or they get notifications when you're doing something that's against.
Is that pretty normal for parents to?
Yeah.
Yeah, more or less.
more or less, yeah.
And
It
there's
de- it
also like
depends.
schools, like teachers leading like school accounts just to make sure what content is posted is school appropriate by their guidelines.
What were you gonna say?
So those are on your school accounts, but not on your personal accounts?
Yeah.
There's
Right.
also the core moderation teams at the companies themselves and their main offices or whatever branch offices they have. Although in recent years, those have been a bit iffy.
sometimes.
What topics would you personally not address or post on social media?
Politics, religion.
Yeah, something,
Politics.
anything that can make you, I think especially as Jewish people, more exposed than you need to be.
Anything that can like start a controversial argument or
Well, I see that in moderation. Like, I'm a very, I wouldn't say I'm a very argumentative person, I like debating. But I think that what's hard is you have to find the balance between sharing your experience. You know, everyone on social media shares their experience, but I think especially, you know, however more intersectional you are, you have to realize, okay, if I'm sharing my experience about this topic, if I am more or less informed, it could go very poorly for me in either direction. If I'm not informed enough, then people are going to say, like, try to cancel me and be like, oh no, you're not allowed to say that, you're not self-aware enough, you're not this enough, or whatever. But if you're too informed because you are affected by that, you're saying, okay, I'm putting myself out there and I am sharing this experience of mine, this story of mine, and in doing that, I am saying, like, hey, here's me, I'm this, and it's also putting you up for target more so. So, like, personally, I would not, and I mean, I've done this in the past and I've learned from my experience that I do not like talking about things like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict on social media, knowing that there are too many differing opinions, especially within my generation, who, for the most part, are not fully educated on that. And just knowing that I am putting myself out there and saying, here's my story and experience with this, and it's like, hey, I'm a Jew, it's like, that's a little too scary for me to think of, like, being targeted, the potential of being targeted in that way.
I
And it's-
almost feel like though so much of our filtering is like based around fear. Like so many of the, like, yes, you need to be careful and monitor what you put and say or present online. I feel like so much of it at this point is such a fear-based filter because of the ability for people to be so hypocritical, like, not hypocritical, like,
People will find a reason to be mad at you.
yeah, and they're able to look at it very easily and like study it a lot because it's like they're far away from you. They can pre-set up and pre-think and everything, their response to your situation. They can resource and make copies of whatever you posted or created. Like, yes, there are ways to say, hey, my account is private, but that isn't to say that someone who's on there could stop having a good relationship with you and then screenshot media that you created and use it against you elsewhere.
Can I switch topics slightly, and then we can come back to any of this? Based on what you've heard so far, do any of you have questions you'd like the group to respond to, or should we just keep going? Ben?
Yeah, but why is Be Real called Be Real? Is it because you can't?
Because you're being so real.
because it can,
You don't alter.
Yeah.
The
There's no
point
filters.
is you can't, the idea is that you're like, you can't
You're doing-
edit it, you can't you can redo
You
it
can
to an
delete it.
extent, and you can delete it, but there's very little changes you can make to it, and it's supposed to be that everyone is on closer to same ground.
Yeah.
in
And it's like
creating
what
the
you're
media.
really doing.
Like, there's not a,
The filters you can put on.
Yeah.
to make it
right,
look-
and there's not like a popularity to it, because it's not really like, I mean, I guess there's kind of, depending on the group of
You can
people you're
react
around,
or
you're
you
like,
can
oh, I have
comment.
more people, I may be real, but like, you don't have followers or like things like that. You're just like
it's compared.
adding people who you want to see, and that's why they do the front back camera, because the idea is that it's just seeing what you're doing.
It's a lot more human of an experience versus controlled by whatever algorithm.
And it's honestly really fun. So.
It's pretty goofy.
Because you could see, like, it's like a photo album, right? So it's like, you have more of a structure around, like, you're supposed to be doing this every day, and you're, like, seeing, like, you know, when you get, like, those recaps, and it's like, this day 1 year ago. It's like that. It's like, you get a recap of everything you've done that year and taken a photo of, and it's kind of fun to think that, like, other people are seeing this, so.
One of the things that surprises me in a way, but not really because I'm more used to it now, is the speed at which information is shared. That it's instantaneous, it seems. So I'd
It
like you to
confuses
think.
us too.
Hmm?
It confuses us too, don't worry.
Okay, I just want to share with you, back when I was a lot younger, something that happened in the community, and compare that to what would happen today if that same thing happened. So I'm going to show you, or give you, and take a look at it while I distribute some of these. Show you, this is a picture of my parents, the front of my parents' house. So that's a picture of the front of my parents' house when I was probably in my 20s, so it was quite a while ago. So I lived in a town of about 43,000 people in New Jersey, same size town now. It's a little town that's a commuter town to New York City. And has a very mixed population. And my father, you can see on the display up there, this was the holidays. My father put up that display for 14 years. And my father was a woodworker, and he worked for an outdoor lighting company. This was his project. He loved this. And so, he put this up every year, and then one Saturday morning, they went outside and found what you're seeing on the sidewalk. Oh, with the recorder. Oh, okay, what you're looking at is, what you're looking at is the front of a home with a porch. And at the top of the porch, on one side there's what is it called too? There was a Christmas tree with lights on it. On the other corner, there was a Star of David with, and across the top it says peace to all, and underneath shalom. Okay, and when my parents went out on Saturday morning on their front walk, was painted a swastika. Now, the only people that knew about that were my parents. They didn't have a cell phone. They couldn't send a picture to anybody. My parents knew about that. So what they did was they called the police because they thought it was any crime, and they called their rabbi, who both came over. Okay, now in this small town, our newspapers came out on Thursday, once a week. We got a newspaper. So this happened on a Saturday morning. On Thursday, so except for people that my parents contacted, nobody knew about this. So on Thursday, on the front page of the newspaper, there was an article, and I didn't bring the article, I forgot it. And it was a police report and comments by the rabbi and how terrible this was. In addition to that, we got these lovely, scattered all over the front porch. With these lovely cards. I'm filming this. These are more colorful, but you probably see them. These are cards that were printed by the New Order Publications from Lincoln, Nebraska. They had swastikas on them. One says, "The inflation is Jewish." So how do you think, how is that very different? You see the differences and why maybe it's hard for me to understand the
Yeah.
speed at which all these things happen. What are your feelings about how this happened? My father never put up that exhibit again.
I think definitely people would talk about it. Like, for social media, you tell people stuff about your life. So if you're feeling bad about this, and you might post it or like say how horrible this was, even maybe online on Instagram, posting it to the world, or just to your friends, texting, and certainly people would find out one way or another pretty
Well,
quickly.
Sorry.
I think.
I think a good example of that is that a similar thing happened a couple months ago. I don't know time, but here,
Yeah,
and it was very quickly on the news, on social media. I
found out
left
about
the
it
synagogue.
from social media before I even found about it, and I was there
And I was gonna
working
say I was
12
there.
hours before.
Yeah, like
You might want to tell people what happened.
Oh, we got hate crimed.
yep.
We got hate crimed here. There was graffiti. Sorry, I said that very casually. I've come to acceptance with it. We got hate crimed across the street on the sanctuary with graffiti. What was it said? Diayuden, I think.
Yeah.
The stained glass in the library was broken. I actually last year was working in the library, so the following week it was Sunday night to Monday morning that they reported it, and that Sunday, Io, Avery, Max, all of us, we had been working actually 12 hours before. And the next day, my non-Jewish friends from my school were actually the ones who were posting about it, and they said, Congregation Beth Israel hate crimed in Northwest Portland. And I was like,
And wasn't this in theology class that we turned to each other and we were like, wait,
I think so.
like that's literally my synagogue.
That's
Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, because people were going around the school saying, oh, did you hear the synagogue get hate crime? We said, oh, what synagogue? And they said Congregation Beth Israel, and we're like, that's our synagogue. We were there yesterday. How did that happen?
And then Anita texted me because
Yes,
she was
Ben's
there
daughter
even
texted us.
closer to when it happened.
Yeah, and
Oh, can I just finish one thought and then go ahead?
and then also the following week, since I worked in the library last year, a friend and I, we were still cleaning up the stained glass that had been broken. And it was just kind of like weird, like everyone was coming up to me saying, oh, I'm so sorry, like my teachers were pulling me out of class and saying, oh, if you need anything, like we're gonna talk about it. And I was like, I don't know, it's like, it feels like everyone who's not Jewish is more upset than me. And I have to keep going to teach 5th graders next week at the same place, right? And I'm just like, I don't know, like I never felt like I was truly ever distraught. I was just kind of like, okay. And then my school had a field trip to bring we had collected, I think, 500 letters from the school saying like, oh, you know, our remorse. And I took a field trip actually with Io's friend, our mutual friend, and we all went, and it was so weird because it was me and one other person were congregant, and like I was like calling Elizabeth, and I was like, hey Elizabeth, can you let us up? And it was just strange because it was like, I don't know, it was like I was touring around something, like I was touring my synagogue, but it was something tragic had happened.
What were you gonna say? I cut you off.
One way or another, the information is going to get out into the world. Even if you try not to tell anyone, it'll get out and people will approach you about it.
I think it loses so much of its meaning though because of that, because maybe it took weeks longer or less people knew about this situation. But for example, I went to school with a no class year, and like they wrote all of these letters and we brought them here. But some of the people who wrote those letters were students who made anti-Semitic comments to me in theology classes. So I'm like, just because there's more access to the information quickly and the ability to respond to information from a distance means that it loses a lot of its genuinity. Because I mean, they could go online and be like, this is terrible, this is horrible, and turn around and be like, when was the last time that you supported somebody that is a part of whatever thing that you're posting is tragic?
That reminds me too, I remember because Io and I, we were at the same school last year, and I remember in my theology class the month before, I had students who, we were doing a project, and it was on Judaism, and they said, oh, Anouk, you're Jewish, you know it all, you can do it for us. And I was like, I'm not doing your project. So I talked to the teacher, and she said, oh, you can switch groups. And I did, and like they were like making weird comments to me the whole time. They were side-eyeing me, and it was just such an uncomfortable experience. And then like, you know, a month later, this happened, and it was the kids who were, you know, we talked about it, and they showed the pictures in our theology classes, and they were looking down. And I was like, why, like, tilt your head up. Like, do you not remember, you were the ones who, I mean, you're not going and spray painting this in my synagogue, but like, you're not doing much better.
During Passover, a student in my theology class asked if I slaughtered babies to put them on my door.
Oh.
And I was, it was,
Now, was this one-on-one, or was this on social media?
this was one-on-one, but then these messages get like talked about and traveled about through social media. They'll be like, did you hear that da-da-da said, da-da-da? And then people create conflict behind people's backs.
So,
on social media, I feel like people think they can say horrible things and react to situations like this, like what happened to the synagogue, and say horrible things more comfortably than they would in person, because they feel like they're hiding behind their avatar. Like, no one can see their face. No one can really truly know exactly who they are like you do in real life. So like, if you go online, there will be random people saying horrible things and sharing racist, sexist, homophobic views. And some of those people will spew that hate in real life as well. But some people are like, hide their own opinions in real life, are more comfortable sharing it on social media, which is why I think if this situation had happened today and it had gotten out, there would be people coming and like saying how sorry they were, and there would be some people, a minority, but some people would be saying that this horrible act isn't bad. It's like, they would be saying horrible stuff about Judaism, because online people can just say whatever they want to with less repercussion than in real life.
So this is a question that I would wrestle with, anyone could wrestle with, but I'm interested. So do you think that the real people are coming out, their truest self is coming out in some of these things you're referring to? Or is it just that the ability to just throw something out there and say some horrible thing? I'm just wondering if your feeling is that you're really seeing what's underneath there.
I think it depends.
Yeah, sometimes yes, sometimes no. Some people actually think these things, and some people are just throwing hateful stuff out there just to be hateful, just because they can.
I don't actually think it's ever with the intention of being hateful. I think some people are just uneducated. Like, I think
Well
that
said.
most people, like, if you think in the context of, say, everything, what was it, May of 2021, when everything that was happening in Israel and Palestine, people were posting all these things, and, you know, everyone, the Jewish community was like, if you're saying this, like, if you're saying, you know, Israel is committing genocide, or Israel is doing this, like, that's inherent, like, saying Israel shouldn't exist is inherently anti-Semitic, and people are like, no, that's not it. And I've had multiple conversations with people about it, and I genuinely think, for the most part, at least in Portland, you know, there's very few Jewish people, that I think it's, at least in my experience, most for the time, it's a narrative of being uneducated and not knowing Jewish people, not knowing the effects of this, not knowing, and it doesn't even have to be applied to Jewish people, not knowing enough, like, it's about being sheltered, right? Like, if you don't know enough Black people, of course, if you say something racist, like, you're not gonna know, like, oh, am I being racist right now? Like, you can't see it if you haven't experienced it or seen it been experienced. And I think for the most part, it kind of, they go hand in hand. Like, you know this person can be uneducated, but you as the minority will know, I just don't feel safe with this person anymore for the most part. And I think that people can be redeemed, but I don't think they can ever take back what has been done. And you can, you know, try to give reparations, but like, there's only so much you can do to make someone feel safe again.
Adding on to that, when the Israeli-Palestinian conflict escalated a bit more was it last year or 2 years ago? 2 years ago. I was being flooded with private messages asking what are my thoughts on the conflict, or Just questions like that, people automatically going to me because I'm the Jewish guy, the one Jewish guy in the school. Of course, I know everything. I don't. And there's just so much arguing, so much discourse going on. I just decided to not engage because I don't need that stress.
There's a good boundary to set back. Good job.
But I think a majority of people are just uneducated, and there's just so many people on social media. Some of them just are saying it to be hateful. Some of them are actually have these opinions. Most of them are just uneducated. It's just such a variety of people because social media reaches out so far, and like someone like thousands of miles away could be commenting on a post that I make, and it's like so many different people are on social media. Of course, there are going to be views that I'm forgetting words. But of course, there are going to be views that opinions that differ, and there's just so many people. Some of them are always going to be hateful, and then that hate misinforms people, and then those misinformed people go out and spread more hate. It's like a ripple effect, starting with people who are hateful, and it's because people don't fact check the things that
And
they.
I think that goes back too to the thing about influencers, right? If you are influencing people and you have like 3 million followers, people are gonna inherently listen to what you say because that is your job, that is your title. And I think that if you as an influencer is saying a wrong message, like you gotta be careful, because if you're saying that, then it's like what you said, it's like a ripple effect of like, then your followers say that, then your followers' friends say that, then it feels like the whole world is saying that. And I think that it's about, you have to really know like what power status you're at and what education you have to give this information.
Adding on to that, the moderation tactics and other strategies that companies have employed to keep misinformation off their services are iffy at best. There was, I think, a report at one point that Meta, the company that manages Instagram and Facebook, had a policy of keeping misinformation and hate up on their website for whatever motive, I do not know, but that happened.
Yeah, I think it's about, it doesn't seem like misinformation if there's sources that are prescribed to it.
Because not enough people fact check what they see. Like you may go research something, 1 in every 5 posts and misinformation that comes up, but those other 4 pieces of fake information is going to get lodged in your mind, and you might like pass it on because you didn't fact check it. Even if you think it's something that is true, it might not be true, and not enough people are fact checking the information, so they end up accidentally spreading misinformation.
Is there a role that schools could play in teaching you to be better?
We've talked about this a lot, actually.
I mean,
Definitely.
I mean, I think
Definitely.
schools almost encourage our like negative habits with our phones. Like,
We have cell phone
I mean,
caddies.
your special cell phone jail. Her school might be the example of
I'm kidding.
an answer
No.
that most teenagers
No,
would hate,
absolutely
but
not.
they think works is that they
doesn't
don't
work.
have their phones in class. But
Yeah.
like, I don't know, when I'm sitting in class, 98% of the students in my classroom are looking at their phone.
Right.
Even if the teacher's talking, there's maybe like
We just have iPads.
70% of them are looking at their phone when the teacher's talking. But like, maybe they're not fully looking at it, but it's like, on the desk and they've got one earbud in and you're swiping through something. Like, the teacher has their phone in class. We all have computers and tablets. So much of our work is electronic, so there's so many pocket holes and, you have your split tabs, you're playing a game, you're listening to music, you're doing this. Like, there's so many loopholes that are, like, they provide easy resources to use. in
Like, I
schools.
just downloaded Be Real on my iPad today. It was so
Exactly.
easy.
So you think this is a good thing or a bad thing?
I think, I just want to
I don't know.
say,
Go ahead.
schools, really don't have the resources to help us know how to fact check the stuff, because people in schools, it's like teachers, haven't, at most, like, grew up with the internet in its starting phases. Like, we're the first generation that understands the internet entirely, so we're really on our own using most of the resources. Most of my teachers don't know how to fact check something. So if they don't know how to, they can't teach us how to fact check something. And I think that might get fixed in
And
like
we were
the
the guinea pigs
future
of the show.
generations.
Honestly.
But right now, it's kind of chaotic because my teachers would not know how to. They try to help us, but it just they're kind of really incompetent. There's a vast chasm between generations that grew up with the internet and generations that like didn't that much.
I think the pandemic had a big play in that too, because we were forced so quickly to use all of these new platforms and apps and resources.
Especially when
And
we went into
then-
the pandemic.
And
were,
then
you know,
we just
preteens.
continued to use them after and integrate them into the way that we teach and learn and live and work. But we still don't necessarily know what we're doing with them. We just were expected to know what to do with them.
Yeah.
I think that the best thing, the way I see the best thing that schools and teachers can do is, you know, because you're right, we are kind of the guinea pigs of the generation of like, we are the ones who have to know how to do it to then teach other people. And it might not be fair, but it just seems kind of like that's how it is. And I think that the best thing that teachers can do is really just educate on the issues that they are seeing, because I'm sure most of my teachers are equal contributors to a lot of the misinformation. But I think that,
In what way?
I think that like, just a lot of my teachers particularly are very clear on like their political affiliations or whatnot, and typically that's fine. And I think sometimes it gets to a point where like you can kind of see of like, I wouldn't say you would categorize them, but I think that, you know, based on just the generation of teachers I have, is like, you know, most of the generation does that. I wouldn't assume they're different. And it's not to say that they're a bad person because of it or a bad teacher, but I think that you can kind of just assume of like, they can easily be grouped into this. And I think that really just the best thing they can do is, you know, their job is to educate us on the topics that they're seeing. So, because there's nothing they can do to really prevent us from using social media or having people spread misinformation. I think it's that, how do you teach kids when they're young what they're doing, and they kind of just got to learn their lesson one way or another of like, they're spreading their own thing.
Are there platforms, I know often, if you know what news stations people watch,
Oh, I don't watch
you
the
can
news.
get a general idea of how they're looking at certain aspects of the world.
Yeah.
Are there certain platforms that are identified that way as well?
I don't know about platforms, but I think based off of creators, because
Yeah.
sometimes people are like, oh, you listen to that artist or you follow this person and didn't you know that
They did
whatever,
this.
like,
Yeah.
and I think
What
that
do you mean by
maybe,
way?
like
It's all interconnected.
they might have specific perspectives that were called out that you
Yeah.
didn't know it, that you could listen to. Like, for example, Kanye's music or following him on Instagram or anything like that, and people were like, no, but like, the old Kanye, and like,
Separating the
yeah, but no.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard kind of practice. It's like a lot of the time with social media, a lot of it's artists, and you gotta learn to separate like artist from the art, or writer from the book, or whatever. Yeah, I agree. I think that just, it's kind of a hard balance to find. Were you gonna say
Any
something?
other comments on that? You started and I interrupted you. I
Oh,
think.
yes.
I was just gonna say, it's all interconnected, so if people can find, I was just adding a quick thing onto what they were saying.
That it's so interconnected, it's hard to differentiate one from the other?
Yeah.
Have you witnessed, I know I hear from other teenagers that I interact with that they've witnessed online, you know, personal attacks on friends of theirs, or
Absolutely.
so, is it bullying or is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's not enough moderation to stop it because, like, it's usually happening in more circles that are more private. So it's not like the school can come in and stop it. And it's like usually under the pretense of a joke or just like,
I think too that sometimes it's to be petty.
yeah.
Like,
And
no one, I mean, at least in my experience, no one directly says names. Because if you name drop, like, you're gonna get the consequences. But, but I think too that, like, there's this alluding to, like, what's happening. Like, it's happened to me before. Like, I've had, I think especially where I grew up, in the middle school I grew up in, like, it's very prominent to, like, you're very petty and, like, you openly out these people so you know, like, if the popular girl says, like, it's, like, very classic teen movie, like, oh, the popular girl says something about you, like, it's not so much like she's gonna tell all her friends, it's like she's gonna tell her social media following, and now they're gonna not like you because of something someone who is influencing them is saying. Yeah, so I think it's really just, like, a matter of who's saying what, and I don't think there's an intention behind it besides to be petty and mean.
I think it's also trying to get a reaction out of someone. They basically just want to, like, instigate and see how far they'll go without a consequence.
Or entertainment off of that itself, like people posting fight videos, is people that instigated, and then people are entertained by the result.
Of a fight?
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's entertaining by other people's downfalls.
And we started talking about the hate crime against the synagogue, and there was one up at the Holocaust Memorial as well, in kind of the same time period. Have you encountered other evidence of anti-Semitism or hate speech on social media?
Yeah.
Yep.
oh, yeah, you
Both in a public post setting and stuff messaged to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
And what does
I
moderation do?
received them all.
Nothing.
nope.
Yeah, we have them. Like, we keep them.
You
Because
keep them,
Keep what?
You keep
The
I mean,
receipts?
yeah, I keep the receipts of everything. No, I mean, that's like kind of what we call it. Is like, you know, when you keep a receipt, you have all the evidence of this happened. It's like you keep the evidence because you know, like, if someone tries to say something, like, you have it. I think for me, I've always said this, and I'll say it again, is my family's from the East Coast. So, like, hearing my dad's growing up story of, like, his dealing with anti-Semitism is far different than mine. You know, people, like, my dad's from Philadelphia. People used to throw pennies at him. And I think that kind of what I've always said is East Coast anti-Semitism is direct. West Coast is passive. And I think that's kind of what I see the most is, like, especially with social media, like, it's the ability to be passive without anyone getting the consequence. And I totally think that it's just a way people can be hateful in a way that they don't have to get any repercussions for it. So I think that's where I see it the most, honestly, is social media, is people being anti-Semitic and not knowing it, or people being anti-Semitic and knowing it, or you posting something about being Jewish and then getting a comment about it the next day at school. So I think just things like that.
so besides keeping receipts, what kind of action can you take,
Report it.
or can you?
I mean, you can't really. That's the thing. Is like, I mean, if you want to like contact a person that you had an altercation with online,
It's not a good idea.
that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, I suppose you can bring it into a physical. Like, do you want to have a conversation face to face?
That's a terrible
But
idea,
teenagers
too.
are not going to have a conversation face to face. If they're
It's
meeting
gonna
up
fight.
over an online altercation, they're going to fight, and then there's going to be a video that gets posted. Like, and you repeat the cycle.
Like then they have to go and say it to your face.
Right.
Now they can hide behind a screen, a keyboard, and an alias. You don't know who they are.
Yeah.
Or,
I mean, oh, sorry, go ahead.
it's escalating it to take it off social media. or to talk to them one-on-one. Because they can just say that they were making a joke or they were just reposting what someone else said, and then you seem like the bad guy for escalating it, or like you can be called sensitive for like bringing it to other people's attentions, talking to them one-on-one, or even if it's severe enough, like talking to an authority figure of like a principal or something. So when you take it offline and into the real world or personally, it gets escalated a lot, and they can fall back onto it being a joke or them not meaning it. And so they use social media to hide and to be a cushion for their consequences.
What? You say it's a joke, even if it's hateful? You
It's
still
an
think
excuse.
It's an excuse. People call it dark humor.
It's an
Yeah, when
excuse to not take responsibility.
Exactly. No one thinks it's a joke. The person who posted the hateful comment says it's a joke, so they get less consequences. And because it's on social media, that also gives them less consequences.
Because it's consumed by so many people, at least some of them are going to agree with them. And so they have the backing of whatever audience consumed it.
And
And
on
if you
social
try-
media,
So maybe some people did, like, by people liking it or reposting it or sharing it, they're validating it being a joke, even if they're not necessarily viewing it as a joke. Some of them are, and also regardless if you're viewing it as a joke or not, you consumed and added, like, interaction with the media.
Are the things that you're reading, I think I know the answer, but let me just, based on what you just said though, are there experiences that you have on social media that make you uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Yes.
100%.
So what can you do to not get involved with that stream, is that the right
Don't
word?
be on social media.
I mean, once it
Well,
happens,
I think there's
you
that
can-
to an extent. I think that you can limit seeing that person or that train of people. I don't think you can limit it entirely. I think that's what comes with growing up as a minority, is like you're gonna feel like you're under attack regardless. But I think that you can kind of limit like who's in your circle or not. Like for me, I have a private account on Instagram, and like I've had to remove family members because I'm like, I don't like the way you're talking to me on social media. You're not gonna be in my circle. You can text me. So we'll see if I reply.
That's interesting.
You guys probably all know about Hollywood, right?
About what?
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely.
Yes.
And full disclosure, I do sort of media for one of my channel. But you know about algorithms, you all. So literally, the more you like or share, or less you like or share, that it is a computer algorithm that amplifies or de-amplifies things. So you can do a lot of things in the stuff, you don't lock it down, but you are also part or not part of it actually ending up in people's feeds, even though you didn't want it. They're like, why am I seeing this? Oh, Debbie liked this post, and I'm friends with Debbie, and now I'm seeing something. So
Then
you
Debbie's
might
gotta be
really-
out the circle.
Right, right. People who don't like Charlie Tony's, you might also look into getting, say, a Fox News post that you didn't like, or a meme things, or you might get it on accident.
Or you can
Algorithms are very
I forgot what I was gonna ask you. Thank you for sharing that. Go for it.
Algorithm can also be a good thing, because then you'll learn new things that are interesting to you, and you might not have seen algorithm, so it goes both ways.
It's a double-edged sword.
So I guess the question, you guys, is, I know you're aware of that as a phenomenon, how much do you think you intentionally use that or respond to it?
It's not intentional.
It's not, I feel like it's not, we don't use it as much like a tool. It's something that happens and you can maybe control it a little bit. Like if Debbie is liking posts and stuff that you don't want to see, you can maybe unfriend Debbie or like block her or so that you stop getting that stuff in your feed. And the algorithms, when the algorithm sees you aren't friends with Debbie, it won't be giving you stuff Debbie likes anymore. But it's not really something that we consciously affect. We only respond to it once something specific about it happens. We don't try and change it first.
And the apps and all the services when you do use them, they really force it upon you to use those algorithms every time you go on and use the service. So you can't really escape it, is the scary part about it. So the level of control that you have is minimal.
Yeah, and I think too, like, in my experience, something that's a little funny because it kind of contradicts what we're talking about is I follow a lot of like Jewish accounts on Instagram, and like some of them are really fun, some of them are really interesting, some of them post really good memes, but some of them too, like they share really like gory stuff that is happening in Israel or hate crimes that are happening, and I'm like, it's 8 in the morning, I don't really want to see this right now. And I think that like there's so much to being informed, and like even your own community, you're like, okay, that's kind of a generalized statement, and I don't necessarily, like, I'm Jewish, and I don't necessarily want to be associated with that. And I think it's hard because there's only so much that you can limit of like, this is the thing I'm associating myself with, but also there are also people who are making these things and making these opinions, and maybe I don't want to be the exact same person as them.
When you're doing work for school, switch this around just a little bit. If you're doing a research project, or you're doing a group project, or can you use social media to do assignments?
No.
Probably you shouldn't.
I do.
Okay.
Well, like what? Like, give an example.
I mean, my English teacher made it an assignment for us to create a TikTok based off of a certain category or whatever. So like, I was writing a paper about Phoebe Bridgers, and so I did a trend that used a Phoebe Bridgers song. Like, we had an assignment where I was directed to go to my social media account, or there's like resources online. Like, all of my apps that I use for school are essentially social media. I mean, Canvas and Canva are all like Canva I use to create like posters and assignments for school. Canvas, your teachers can message you and create posts on the board. Like, that's basically social media.
Yeah, that's technically social media.
Like, even though it's an education-based version, you know, you're still on there with all of your classmates and your teacher on just a digital classroom, essentially. I mean, Google Classroom is definitely that, because you can talk to each other within a mainstream.
Yeah.
And
Is that monitored then?
Yeah.
yes,
I think it's like, I think that's the difference.
Those
is
are
it's
much more
monitored.
heavily monitored.
heavily monitored both by school administration, teachers, and, if applicable, law enforcement. That too.
I think if it's not something that you're supposed to be going on your social media or using like the school versions of social media, it's probably not a good idea to, like, if you want to find out more about a topic, like, don't go to Instagram or don't. It's more like go on the private, or not the private apps. Like, you can like there's search engines. Use the search engines and not stuff where anybody can say anything.
You mean like Google and things like that?
Google.
To
You would Google stuff. You wouldn't like look on.
and then fact check that.
Yeah, it's easier to fact check and figure stuff out on search engines.
Sally? Good.
How do you feel about the platform makers, the people who are using your personal information or your posts, your presence on their media, monetizing your...
I try not to think about it.
Yeah, honestly,
It's really scary.
it's kind of
It's really
scary
accurate.
how because they can get your information and they can do like scary stuff. Like, they can interpret what you're going to do or what you are interested in. And I try not to think about it that much because like there's really nothing we can do about it. They're the ones who control the platform. And you can like get blocked. You can get like kicked out of the platform if you like keep doing stuff. And it's not. They're really like really powerful, and there's nothing you can really do about the way they control your stuff.
Do you have conversations with your peers about thinking like, you know, I'm the product,
Yeah.
and is there, you know, do I want to be the product?
accepted that we are. Like, we're kind of just like, well,
You don't really get a choice. It's either if you don't want to be a product, you don't use the service, but you want to use the service. So you're going to be the product and you just have to accept that. That's just the narrative that we've all grown accustomed to and just accepted. It happens with every company. Everything you sign up for takes a bit of your data and sells it to Meta or whatever advertiser and brings you more ads. The entire thing is just really scary.
I mean, you consent to it, you just don't read the consent form.
Yeah, we-
So,
It's either you use the service, you don't.
it's just part of the social media. I think we've grown up accepting that fact that if you use social media is going to use you. And it's just kind of, it's something that we've accepted mostly, and not something that we really discuss or that I think about that much, because it's just an ingrained part of what social media is.
And these companies need to make money somehow.
Yeah.
So selling your data is a very easy, very good proposition for these small companies, these startups, to generate some cash flow and please their investors at the expense of the users. But do the users care? No.
No, because they get to use what the apps are offering.
I just think like, this is kind of dumb, but I always think about it, I'm just like, well, I don't think, like, it's a generalization, right? You know, there's millions, like hundreds of thousands, millions of users, like, they're not necessarily, unless you do something bad, they're not gonna like look at you, like, I'm just kinda like, well, I don't know if the government cares about me that much, like, I'm just kinda like, you know, I'm a consumer, and I think also just like, if I know what I'm consuming, and I'm okay with consuming that, like, I feel like there's more benefit than there is kind of not.
It takes a lot of time and self-thought and self-training to really ingrain that into your mind. Just to self-moderate yourself every time you're looking at all this content coming at you at quite literally light speed.
Because on every social media platform, you're both the consumer and the producer. And it's tricky to balance that, as well as with like all the ingrained facts of what social media is, like the algorithm and how they can like steal your data or sell your data. It's part of what social media is.
Let's see another hand up, Alex.
Do you think that you have friends who have similar or different social media uses to yours? Would that influence your friendship with somebody?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
I think there's a really big variety in how my friends use their social media. And I think I think it's complicated on whether or not you would influence it, because I don't think it would necessarily influence my friendship with the person, but it might influence my boundaries with that person, because if their social media platform, they often post certain things that I don't want to be associated with, then maybe I'd ask that I'm not, able to be seen in videos or like stuff like that. But I don't think it necessarily, I wouldn't judge their character or like my friendship based on how they presented themselves, as long as it wasn't like, an issue.
I mean, to an extent, I would. I think that it's less about how they present themselves, but if I know that I have a friend who, is so pro this or pro this when we're talking in person, but then they say something that is actively contradicting that, I am slowly losing respect for them. And I think for me personally, a big part of my friendships are respecting them. And if I don't respect what you're putting on social media, then I kind of view friendships as like, I have friends for different reasons, but if it's kind of to a place where I'm like, I don't know if I fully want to go through the trouble of putting up boundaries, like putting up extra boundaries with this person and losing respect for them just to feel like I only sort of like them after posting this.
I have one last question and then Martin?
Well, it's not a question, it's an observation.
Go for it.
I may,
Now, why don't you come use the mic?
I'll bring it to you. No, you don't have to.
Yes, you're,
I just have two. One is a comment, yeah.
clear that, okay. It's clear that all of you have done quite a bit of thinking about this, and I would suggest that you keep on thinking about it. The reason is, about 10 days ago, I was in Cuba. We were with members of the congregation and some other people. The major effort was to visit the Jewish community, which is about 1,200 people. The island itself, where the government just promulgated a new constitution. And this is by way of reminding you who you are and where you are. In the Constitution, which is brand new, it is a criminal offense to knock the government any way. That includes social media, which is maybe this much in Cuba. They don't like it, you go to jail. So give you something to think about. Add to the pot of things you've brought up tonight. And I'd like to thank you very, very much. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think under the umbrella of the First Amendment, we have a lot of freedom here that can be used for good or bad. And I would like to personally thank all of you. I have learned a lot. And I also learned that I need to fact check what I think about social media, perhaps a little bit more in depth.
Maybe we're just influencing you.
Say
Maybe we're the influencers in question here.
I was going to ask, well, maybe I will, the audience to think about what's beneficial and what's not beneficial about what you've heard about social media with this generation of people. Let's start with the not beneficial. What are 3 things that come to mind that maybe this is not a beneficial way to spend 7 hours and 22 minutes? Was I right?
I mean, you weren't wrong. I thought you were going to be wrong. You weren't completely wrong. At this point there.
I read it on the internet.
Yeah.
Not beneficial. Or beneficial. Any ideas come to mind? Or are we all kind of digesting what we heard? Jonathan?
I think it depends on what you're doing with those 7 hours.
Yeah.
If you're learning something,
Oh, absolutely.
and it's something that's true, and it's teaching you to fact check, I mean, as you know, I spend a lot of time on my phone, but I really learn a lot.
Yeah.
But I think you have to there's a lot of noise on various platforms, and you've got to sort of put those things in perspective. And a lot of people don't have the sophistication to do that.
Yeah.
But, I guess with experience, you acquire that.
Thank you.
I appreciate your sophistication and your abilities to articulate your ideas so well. And I really am very appreciative that you took the time to be with us tonight. And we're very honest and open about what it's like to be in your world, which we don't always get to have those feelings about. So thank you, Ben, for encouraging these young people to come and talk with us. And I'll turn it back over to Susan unless somebody else.
I just want to remind people that we have a few more programs coming up. The next one is on March 9th, and it's with Senator Rob Wagner. And I think a number of you probably know that he has been involved in legislation in the Oregon legislature, legislation that has to do with school curriculum. And that's primarily what he's going to be addressing on March 9th. And then on April 13th, Rabbi Kahana will kind of wrap up the series with some discussion about Jewish values of disputation and conflict and discussion. So I hope you'll join us then. And so thank you again to our panel of experts. And thank you, Jill. And good evening.
Thank you so much, all of you. I really appreciate it.
Talk it out and hear what you think you do and what you want to learn about social media.